Thank you, Helen. And thank you to all of the participants, actually the residents and participants of this Zoom. So how I'm going to start is I'm going to start just giving, I guess, a brief introduction to some of my inspirations, but also I would like to speak about some of the themes that my work explore. And one of the main themes that I'm interested in is this notion of journey. And I remember as a kid, constantly watching The Wizard of Oz. You think about this movement of a human being from one space to the next, and other things outside of that. I think about migration, refugees crisis, myself as a migrant from the Bahamas to the US, et cetera, et cetera. So the first part of the first few images of the lecture, again, is just images of inspiration, and then I'm going to go into the work. Another source of reference and inspiration is our readings. I read vastly. I am a proponent of research first, always have been. And for most of my career, I think the work happens after reading and traveling and those type of things, conversations. Bring the inspiration, and then the work begins. So this book, Slavery at Sea, Terror, Sex, and Sickness in the Middle Passage by Sohonde Mostakim, has been one of the inspirations for the particular body of work that I'm going to show you now. I met Sohonde as a graduate student, actually, at Washington University in St. Louis. And I took one class with her, and we just began this dialogue. And during that time, she was writing this book, Slavery at Sea. And as soon as the book was released, I decided to grab a copy, read it. And from that, lots of inspiration happened. And I think lots of the themes, even though speaking about slavery way back before my time, to me, it makes sense today. So, and you'll see reminiscences of that in the work that I'll show later on. This here is a found image. So found images are also very important, both found and images that I take personally are very important to the work. And this work, this image is an image taken here in the Bahamas. So I'm in the Bahamas currently, and this image was taken. This is the old archived image that I got here in the Bahamas. So again, I work between here and the US, and usually in the US, my studio is full of images. So I have what I call a MOG of images. And as I travel, I take many photos, but also I have lots of found photos and also inherited family photos that I all use as reference material. This is a very, very, very recent image taken here in the Bahamas, maybe a month ago, I want to say. No, actually a few weeks ago. So speaking about migration and immigration and refugees. So this image was taken from a drowning that happened here in the Bahamas, about 3 weeks ago. We had some Haitian migrants who were en route from here in the Bahamas trying to head to Florida illegally. So it was a human trafficking or human smuggling operation gone bad. And these are just a few survivors, but 27 people died and a few others are still unaccounted for. And just looking at this image, prior to seeing this image, I made a very similar painting prior to this whole thing happening. And to me, it just all made sense, but this notion of journey. And I think when I speak about journey in particular, I kind of think about journey in the sense of dire circumstances, journey in the sense of looking for a better life. But I also can go back to the history of journey when we look at people like Joseph Campbell, and thinking about the hero's journey, which is another theme that I've kind of played with in the past. And the notion of animal has also been very important to me. Animal as other, but also animal as otherworldly. So you think about the Egyptians and the Greeks and those people from way back when, the image they made during the, I guess I would call it prehistoric times, always had these half man, half animal. And the animal became otherworldly. So the animal represented gods and goddesses. As opposed to now in today's society, if somebody calls you an animal, a dog, or whatever it is, it's kind of somewhat of an insult. But I like to kind of play with this I guess duality of meanings with things. But I think the animal too is also important to me because my personal love for animal. I always joke around and tell people that initially I am a veterinarian. Was a big fan of animals from a kid, and it still continues now. Unfortunately, I was not able to pursue veterinary medicine, and instead I pursued art, but the animal continues in pretty much all of my work, which you'll see as time progresses. So I want to start with this piece, 1718 WWJD 2022. So WWJD, What Would Jesus Do? Was both a saying, but also somewhat of a brand in the space that I was in at the age of 17 and 18. So I'm thinking about high school time. So I went to a Christian high school, and the notion of what would Jesus do was both taught to us, but we were also given like bracelets and t-shirts all saying, what would Jesus do? And in this piece in particular, I'm kind of reflecting on that space. And again, I am referencing the Bahamas very heavily in this work. We can start with the left-hand figure who has a slingshot in his hand. And with this work, I'm kind of thinking about the naivety I had in relation to man and animal relationship at that time. In particular, using these somewhat weapon, yeah, slingshot is a weapon. So using these weapons to hunt animals. So even though I loved animals, I also hunted them, again, out of naivety, not knowing better type thing. And in this work, the hunted is a snake. And I don't know how well you can see the image on the screen, but there is this, towards the bottom left of the piece, there is this big bluish, blackish serpent that is being hunted. And there is this figure who's also using a cell phone. So now we're speaking about popular culture. So usually when incidents happen, there's always cell phones out. You know, people are taking images, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But also I'm always referencing my Christian upbringing. So in this work, I'm also pointing to Christian motifs. In particular, the reclining figure, in between his hand and his body is a a Christian funerary fan that I cut out and collaged and put in, juxtaposed with his hand holding a burning marijuana joint. And for me, I'm always thinking about time in a very, I guess, inconspicuous way. So for me, the burning of a cigarette or a cigar or a joint or whatever you want to call it speaks about time in a non-obvious way. So usually when people think about time, they think about either night and day, or they think about a clock. But in this case, I'm using something burning. There's something that's still lit. It's speaking about something that's happening pretty recent. Also, I'm using water, not only in this piece, but in other pieces as to speak about time, water rising or water or water descending as time is very important to me. Most of the works are very material heavy, and as we progress, you're going to see, I guess, close-up shots of the material that I'm using in this work, along with the description to the bottom of each piece. It's very material heavy. This piece is called Yesterday, Brother's Keeper. And again, in this work, I'm kind of reminiscing childhood memories again. You know, I'm thinking about otherness for one. And during this time too, I was creating this series of figures that I refer to as red bones. Red bone in the sense of first of all, I'm borrowing from a term from the American South, red bone, yellow bone, that kind of speaks about mulatto or mixed race. But in these works, I'm not particularly interested in painting portraits of mixed race. What I'm doing is I'm pulling away skin. So I don't know how many of y'all have seen the Bodies exhibition, where there are sinews. So a sinew pretty much is the pulling back of a skin and showing like the musculature of a being or animal. So yeah, so for a while I began to build this community or the society of sinews that I consider red bones. And the counterpart to that sinew would be a yellow bone. So if you look on the floor of this, or the bottom area of this, bottom right-hand area of this piece, there is this, sorry, there's a thunder rolling. If you look to the bottom of this piece, there's this yellow kind of ghostly figure. And for me, that becomes the spiritual counterpart of the red bone. So in making this work, I'm also thinking about mythos, like myth making, you know. But yeah, so that's Yesterday's Brother's Keeper 2020, sorry. This is another piece entitled Boys from 2018. And so the order of these are not in chronological order. I'm just kind of trying to use images that I kind of think relate to tell a larger story. And this work was somewhat of the beginning of the Red Bone series. And how that series occurred was I was spending a lot of time in Senegal, in Dakar. And I was using that space both as a thinking space, but also I was taking a lot of photographs, and just simple photographs with my phone. And the photos started during a residency that's called Thread. That was in a village actually called Scythian village in Senegal. And I spent about 2 months there. And while there, I used the time to gather material and take photos in exchange for objects. The objects in this case being soccer balls. So the reason I was making this exchange using soccer balls as the object of exchange is just being there, I observed that many of the kids there were spending most of their time playing soccer with makeshift soccer balls. So either the soccer balls were old, dilapidated, and beaten, to the point where there was no air in the ball, or they were making these makeshift balls using plastic and other material. And if you look at this piece to the bottom right, you'll see this round thing. That's one of the soccer balls that I exchanged with people from the Scythian village, and I gave them in return an actual soccer ball. All of the material, so all of the fabrics in this piece were gathered from that village as well. So the shirt of the back figure with the like the triangular pattern, that was again all fabric from that space, along with the sleeve of the guy in the front was all from that space, and the hanging fabrics all from this village. Two birds, one stone. Again, in this piece, I'm thinking, I'm first of all using the red bone as a continuation of this, I guess, community that I'm building. But now again, thinking about time, time in a very, very peculiar way, time in the sense of water rising. So here we have this figure standing in water that's rising and being confronted by a serpent who is on the bottom half of the picture plane. Also in his hand are two parrots or macaws. And for me, this work kind of speaks about a few things. First, I mean, to me, he's protecting these two macaws or these two birds while putting himself in danger. But also I'm interested in this notion of the cone or party hat, which you should see in other pieces to come. And the party hat for me, I'm kind of thinking about multiple histories. So I'm thinking about the history that we know today of the party hat, which is, okay, it's our birthday, let's celebrate, let's put on this cone hat. But using that juxtaposed with the true intention of the party hat, which was the dunce cap. So way before the party hat became the party hat, it was, I would call it a tool or object of reprimand, usually in institutions, usually in educational institutions. So when people misbehaved, they were made to sit in a corner with a cone hat with a D, dunce. And again, thinking about the history of the party hat. But also when people made or did petty crimes, they were made to ride on horsebacks backward wearing these party hats. So again, I'm interested in this kind of duality of meanings throughout the paintings. This piece is called Faith, Hope, and Love, 2021. And in making this piece, I was making a series of works that was based on fatherhood, in particular, single fatherhood. And the reason I kind of was examining those things was because I was a product of single fatherhood. So losing my mother, I lost my mother at a very young age, and was raised by my father and my other family members. And in this work, I was kind of interested in reflecting on that time. So the female figure in the piece who holds this sword is both a protector, but in her skirt there's a Bible. So kind of thinking about Christianity and faith again, and I don't know how well you can see on your screen, but she's impregnated, and in her belly is this corpse. Again, speaking about the notion of miscarriages, et cetera, et cetera. And again, I'm using various materials, various found objects, including mirrors, dolls, beads, staples, etc. This here is a detail, just to give you an idea of the type of objects that are embedded in the pieces. So this here is, I guess it's a Christian, like an ornament that you put on a Christmas tree, but it's a cherub. That's I guess collaged or fastened onto a mouse trap, which is again fastened onto these, what do I call them? These fabric straps. I don't think strap is the word I should be using. These, I guess I'll call them straps. But again, the use of material in not only this work, but this and other works have been very, very important throughout the works. So if you look at the works from afar, they look like just pure painting, but as you get closer to the works, it becomes like a treasure hunt of sorts, where you're finding various objects embedded in the painting. It's nearly like a relief sculpture. Yes, it's somewhat like it's somewhat like a relief sculpture / relief painting, I would like to describe them as. This here is another detail. And in this detail, we're looking mostly at fabrics. Again, this is a detail from the boys, the painting with the two boys and the gun from Senegal. But in the background is pretty much the fabrics that I found from that space. But I think this is also a good detail because it kind of gives you a better idea of the painting sensibility that happens during the pieces. So I kind of think about a lot of the paintings nearly like writing music, you know, like it's not a monotone type of thing. There are various speeds and various temperatures that happen when I paint. So we can have anything from a very gestural stroke to a very meticulous, well-rendered thing. And I think for me, it's very important to have these melodies, I would like to call them, happening within the paintings. And again, we will be thinking about the mixture of fabrics, gestural or expressionistic painting, very fine Renaissance type painting, some drawing, stapling, cutting, tearing, we can go on. This piece is called Bathwater. And this piece was actually made during the pandemic, the very, very, very beginning of the pandemic. So during the beginning of the pandemic, I was an inaugural artist in residence at the Norton Art Museum in Florida. And during that time, nobody really understood what was going on. There was like it was like full panic. And the host of the residency gave me the option to either go back home in Baltimore or ride out the first lockdown at the residency. And I decided to ride out the first lockdown at the residency. And while there, I was just keeping up with news, you know. And this was the beginning where we were, first of all, the grocery stores were empty. So we didn't know if we would have enough food to even carry us. And the little bit of food we were able to have, we were told we must wash these things, we must sanitize this, we must do this, we must wear a mask, et cetera, et cetera. So in this work, a few things are happening. So there is a washing of hands that is happening, but it's happening in dirty water. So there are tadpole eggs and tadpoles that are painted in this water. But the yellow figure in the far left, he's wearing this beak. And the beak references the mask that was worn. I think it was, I forgot the year it was worn, but there was a plague that was happening, and the doctors were wearing this weird beak mask. So you will see these masks begin to continue in works as I continue to show them. But yeah, so he's wearing this this beak, and there's an exchange going on. So you in the middle part of this painting, there's an exchange that's happening. So I'm thinking about with the exchange, I'm kind of thinking about the lack of things or the lack of products that was available at the time. But with the big, thinking about the mass mandate that was happening at the time. And then with the water, I'm thinking about time again, for one, but also this notion of washing in somewhat contaminated water, for two. This piece is entitled, "And If You Drown, You Drown." And with this work, I'm thinking about this notion of the refugee, and in particular, a group of refugees who are about to meet their demise. So there are several figures in this craft, in this sea vessel, and the vessel is taking on water. The captain, the yellow figure, is playing this instrument that is, the instrument is a handsaw and a tree branch. And, excuse me, and the handsaw and the tree branch, I'm referencing something very particular to the Bahamas that's called rake and scrape, which is a folk tradition of music. And the reason I'm referencing is a dual reference. I'm referencing that the Bahamas, but also referencing the sinking of the Titanic. So when this Titanic was sinking, there was music being played. This is merely a canoe or a raft or whatever type of vessel, small vessel, but there's music playing as this vessel is sinking. To the far left, we have somebody who's seasick, who has his head overboard, I guess, puking. Next to him, there is somebody with these makeshift light bulbs who is doing like somewhat of a search and rescue. The middle figure, again, we see the mask. So thinking about the plague doctors. And to the far background, to the left-hand corner, y'all may not be able to see it on screen, but there are two alligators waiting for whoever is left over, or whoever isn't able to make the journey, or whoever falls overboard, etc. And then there's a flying fish. So again, just referencing the flying fish, somewhat somewhat to speak about fleeing. Usually when you see flying fish, or most fish, when they're jumping out of the water, they're usually fleeing predators. So kind of pointing to those type of things. And again, I'm thinking about water as time. This is a detail of that work. So just to give you an idea. So I'll go back just to show you the painting from afar. So it looks all paint. But once we get close, we see all of the object making that's happening. So the smile of this face is made of an old big hoop earring that I opened up and stapled to the canvas. So for me, it serves both as a smile, but the staples for me point to teeth, but it also points to it also points to this mending, mending in the sense of surgical mending. So you think about when I use staples in my work, I think about a wound being mended. I use sometimes thread to sew things together. I'm thinking about a wound, not a severe wound, but a wound being sewn together. And the reason I kind of point to this notion of the wound is, for me, many of the canvas become skins, metaphors for the human skin. And the way I treat the canvases, they range anywhere from a controlled slice using an X-Acto knife, a controlled trauma, to stabbings. So I'd stab the canvas and tear and rip the canvas sometimes. And then sometimes I'm just using staples to kind of fasten things to it. A part of the face is also made from a mousetrap. And I'm also using found beads. And just to speak about the material, most of the material I'm sourcing is sourced through travel. These material in this piece in particular was sourced from here in the Bahamas, from material that I inherited from my deceased grandmother. This is another detail of that work, and it's actually a tooth. And it's a tooth from a cousin of mine who lost a tooth, gifted it to me, and I decided to put it in a work. This is, again, a found synthetic palm leaf that I decided to include. Old Mickey Mouse watch, again, from the Bahamas, from my grandmother's house. And this work is entitled Black Widow, Rescue and Recovery, sorry. And again, I'm thinking about the aftermath of disaster, the aftermath of lost and found, you know, like. So, and this work I'm pointing to the Red Cross in particular. Me, myself, I was a part of the Red Cross as a kid. Actually into high school. I was a member of the Red Cross and did a lot of community service with those. So for this, I'm kind of paying homage to that time, but also paying homage to the work that they continue to do during search and rescues worldwide. A Voyage Fit for a King. So this work goes back to Senegal. So anytime I go to Senegal, one of the most important stops for me is the Door of No Return on Gorée Island. And the Door of No Return is an area in Senegal on Gorée Island where slaves were both held, but also it was the place of departure where they left to go to the New World to be slaves. And anytime I go there, I'm kind of engulfed in emotion, you know. Actually, I was there just a few months ago again, but always like there's a feeling you get when you enter this space. And in this work, I am using my deceased mother and her deceased cousin as models for this piece. And for me, it's important to use them again, both to pay homage to them as deceased, but also to pay homage to the many lives that were lost in this trade or in this voyage. And again, bringing the animal in, so the animal as a totem appears in this work. And materially, I'm using, it's kind of hard to see, but in the white area, there's like these weird brown spots. They are actually gunpowder. So I'm using gunpowder, Nelly has glitter. So the same way people use glitter, like I have like tons of gunpowder that I'm putting into the work. Other objects in this work are chains, mouse traps, mirrors, etc. And again, this is a detail. So I'm going to go back just to see the full thing. So now we're going to look at a detail which is pointing to the hat. And this is a detail again, just to show materially what's happening, but also technically what's happening. So here I'm using a mixture of spray paint, chalk, so regular powder chalk, pencil, acrylic, and this object again inherited from my grandmother. This is another detail of that work. And what you're looking at here is a combination of a chain, like a chain that you wear around your neck, tiles. So the white area, they are all tiles that I'm sourcing and kind of collaging in the work. And the cat using a lot of spray paint, stapling, spray paint, stapling, and regular acrylic painting. This is also from that piece. And again, just to show you materially what's happening. And now we have the cherub again, kind of speaking about Christianity. It also points to the Renaissance, so kind of paying homage to that time. And the multiple staples that happen throughout the work. This work is called The Night Before Christmas Startled the New Year. And this piece is very recent this year, and it was inspired by a visit here in the Bahamas, actually an incident here in the Bahamas that happened over the Christmas, where this this politician's husband was slain the night before Christmas. He went Christmas shopping, pulled up in his drive-through. I think there was some hit that happened, and it definitely sent. He was somewhat an elderly or older guy, and it sent shockwaves through the community here in the Bahamas, which is very small. And I decided to make a piece kind of dedicated to that incident, but also the deceased. This is the detail of that work. Again, I'm using tile. And this here is tile. And on top of the tile, I'm painting. So the tile, I'm actually collaging directly onto the canvas and using that somewhat as a surface to paint. Underneath the tile, I'm using mesh. So the mesh kind of holds everything together. I then pour acrylic house paint, so latex house paint, and use it as a fastener. And once it dries, I begin to work on top of it. This piece is called Carriage. And again, I'm thinking about this notion of journey, this notion of migration, but also this notion of fatherhood. So here we have a father and a daughter. The father is taking the daughter on his shoulder as they go to wherever they are going. And if you remember earlier, I kind of spoke about the red bones and the yellow bones being the spiritual counterpart of the red bone. So in this piece, what's happening is we have the red figure who was the guy, and the girl on his back is red going into yellow, which kind of speaks about her dying. So he is trying to take her to this space while she is dying. So kind of speaking about, death that happens on these long journeys for a better life. This piece is called By and By. And in this work, it's a funeral scene, actually. And for me, it's a homage to a good friend of mine. During the COVID pandemic, he lost 7 of his family members. Actually, this was, this year alone. So between January and now, he's already lost 7 people. No, last year, sorry. Last year, between January and probably mid-year, he had lost 7 people due to the pandemic. And I decided to make a piece dedicated to him and his family. And in this work, there are several things happening. So now we see the beak happening again. So the plague doctor beak is happening, but there's mourning. So to the bottom area, especially to the bottom right-hand area, there is a small pocket in the canvas where there is a doll head embedded into spray foam. And for me, these people are grieving that doll head, which again, it's a representation of death. If you look in the top left-hand corner, you'll see a horse that's ascending. Attached to the horse is a set of keys. So I'm kind of thinking about the keys or the gates to heaven. But I'm also thinking about this notion of reincarnation. The notion of when we die, we come back up as animals or something else. And this is a detail of that work. So you can see that there's a key that's embedded in this light bulb, and earrings, again, inherited from my grandmother, and all sourced from the Bahamas, taken back to Baltimore and embedded into this work. This is and this here is a purse. And inside, there's something inside of this purse, but it's stapled, so nobody knows what's inside the purse. And we all know with artwork, we don't tamper with artwork once it's out of the studio. So there's something inside of this purse. But along with that, I don't know how well you can see, but there are coins, like 1-cent pieces, that are also embedded into this piece. And to the right-hand side, there is this lace fabric that made up the dress of one of the figures. Actually, the plague doctor has this lace as fabric. This piece is called The Kite Fighter. And The Kite Fighter kind of speaks again about this notion of journey again. So when you think of a kite ascending and descending, it's journeying to a place and coming back down. But in the background of this work, there's a watercraft or a boat, and the boat is ablaze. And in this work, there are a few blazes or sources of light happening. One being from the boat that's ablaze, 2 being from the fire that's happening on the seashore, and 3, the figure on his finger has a firefly. So kind of playing with this multiple metaphor for light, light sources under a dark sky. The black area in the piece is actually a kite, a painted kite, but I'm using garbage bags to also kind of make the kite. I think I may have a detail of the garbage bag, and I'll speak about it once I get to the detail. But again, so with this piece, I'm speaking about this notion of journey, but also this notion of faith. So here we have a Christian pendant as an earring. Again, just speaking about this holding of a faith. And here is the garbage bag. So as kids, how we made kites, where we used garbage bags and string, similar to this, to kind of build these kites again, to ascend and descend. And this here is just an example of the material that's used to make the tail. And the tale, I consider it as a never-ending tale. It kind of goes on and on and on and on and on. This very, very long tale that when it was shown in the space that it was shown, which was in London, it was so long that we had to roll it up because it was too long to fit the entire space of the gallery. This is a very recent work, Wonderful. And this work points more closely to my interest in the Wizard of Oz and using that storyline to speak very particularly about this notion of journey. This notion of faith, this notion of obstacles, this notion of witchery, et cetera, et cetera. And this is a triptych. And in this work, I'm using very peculiar, I mean, for me, it's peculiar. So there was in Baltimore, there was a Mercedes-Benz car that was broken into. And after the car left, I returned to the scene and I picked up all of the broken glass from the scene. And the broken glass from the scene, I have began embedding into my work. And in this work, a lot of the background is made up from this broken Mercedes-Benz glass, along with extension cords. An extension cord, and throughout this work, I'm sorry I didn't point it out earlier. So throughout this work, throughout the work I've shown you to date, a few things has occurred that I guess I missed. This notion of trapping, so that you saw many mouse traps. So this notion of trapping was one. And also the notion of these light fixtures, so these makeshift light bulbs were two. I guess the best memory of that probably is the guy on the boat holding these makeshift light bulbs. But three, the extension cord. And all of these things for me point to my childhood again. So as a kid, my granddad made a lot of traps. So he had these gardens or mini farms. I remember as a kid, he had this property next to the main house, and he had like cabbage and carrots and those type of things. And to avoid people from, to deter people from stealing the crops, he would make these booby traps. And the booby traps were pretty much made with fishing line, and that was stuck into the ground. And every, I want to say 6 feet, there was this fishing line and this booby trap that people had to, not had to, I mean, if you walk, because the fishing line is transparent, you wouldn't see it, you would fall. So that was one of the traps. The second trap he made, he used these orange extension cords, very high voltage, that he would take and he would put into banana patches. So he would shave the orange extension cord to expose the raw wires. He would put them in these banana bunches, and at night he would plug them in to the wall. And again, this notion of booby trapping, et cetera, was his thing. And in many of the works, I'm pointing to that. When I think about the rat trap, I'm even pointing to that. This notion of trapping, booby trapping, but also getting past those traps. And this here is just a detail. So a detail of the piece I just showed just now. Here, so the small little dots to the top left-hand corner of this are the Mercedes-Benz broken glass that I fastened to the canvas. And below is a rose that's also kind of collaged to the canvas. We also have some tape that's kind of hanging down. But again, yeah, so looking at the work there, it's always like this treasure hunt. I'm also using dirt, like raw dirt in the work, and using it somewhat as glitter. This is from the piece, the triptych as well. Again, a chain that I got here from here in the Bahamas. And this object, this dollar sign, I made using earrings. So big hoop earrings that I bent into shape and used thread to kind of tie them together. So kind of thinking about the pendant or chain pendant. This here is another very, very recent piece that I recently shipped here to the Bahamas. It just landed here to the Bahamas, and it's going to be exhibited in the national exhibit here. And again, borrowing from The Wizard of Oz. And the title of this piece, "To All Who Come to This Happy Place, Welcome." And it speaks about a few things. It speaks about fatherhood and the lack thereof. So you see here a community of young men who are somewhat depending on themselves or depending on each other for this guidance. And you look at this and you think about the gang culture, which most cultures are gang cultures. You think about political parties, they're gangs. You think about street gangs, police gangs, basketball teams, gangs, you know? So I mean, so this grouping of people, oh, my battery is dying, give me 1 second. Okay, very good. So kind of thinking about this notion of this grouping of people for protection. Here again, we see the dunce cap happening. You see references to the Bible happening. And in this work, I'm using not found images, actually inherited images. And the image here in this work that's being used is a picture of my father, who is also deceased. Again, just paying homage to him as my father, but also showing a respect for him for the role he played as my father when he was here on Earth. So we have that happening. We have broken glass. So all of the top area is made of broken, not glass, but mirror. So when you walk to this piece, you become a part of the gang because your reflection happens throughout. So the more you walk through, or the more people look at this work, like in groups or even singularly, the more their face continues to merge with the painting through the mirroring that's happening in the top area of the piece. And this is a detail of one of the figures. So his teeth, that one tooth is also glass, a mirror. So when you walk through there, you can see yourself reflected in it. And here is a pendant that speaks about, first of all, a bug on an infection is what I'm thinking about, in particular in this work. But it was also a jewelry pendant that I decided to include. And here again, we see the use of the extension cord. So we have the extension cord that I have staple fastened and multiple light bulbs coming from that one extension cord. I think another thing to be said about the extension cord for me, when I think about the extension cord, especially in the space here in the Bahamas, I think about poverty, is what I think about. I think about poverty and I think about survival. And there are instances, especially in lower income areas, where electricity is shared. It's shared from house to house from multiple extension cords. So one person has electricity, you pay them a few dollars or you give them food or whatever, and they lend you electricity. And these extension cords go on and on and on and on and on, all from one source, but also the danger that happens, or the danger that it could be many house fires happen this way because of power overload. You know, we have one power source, but 10 houses using this one power source. It's means for disaster. So kind of pointing to that as well, using these extension cords in my work. Another recent piece, As Though the Sea Should Pass. And again, speaking about this notion of the refugee, this notion of journey, but journey via sea. And I think for me, in particularly living on an island, journey by sea makes a lot of sense to me. And this piece again is just paying. I'm speaking about that, I'm paying homage to that. And in this work, I'm using anything from mouse traps to old picture slides to broken figurines, etc. And again, this here is a detail. And as mentioned, most of the, maybe all of the pieces, there's always a human-animal component or human-animal relationship happening. And last but not least, this is my current studio. This is the work that's happening now. There's no more red bones. There's no more yellow bones. I'm now interested in Zimbabwe. So I've spent the past 2 months, I want to say, in Africa. I'm just back from there. A lot of the time is spent in Zimbabwe. And I'm now examining the culture there, in particularly the close relationship between that culture and my culture here in the Bahamas. And particularly interested in the way things, it felt like in Zimbabwe, a lot of interactions happen at night. So I'm beginning to do these night paintings, actually at night with music around fire. So they're being made now. There are a lot of fire paintings, night skies, animals that are indigenous to that space. I think about music a lot, you know, music, conversation, et cetera, et cetera. But all new work, I'm getting ready for a few very important shows. One in Singapore, one in Chicago, London, et cetera. So I'm getting ready for those and using these as the beginning of a larger series that's going to those places. And I think this is the end of my presentation. Thank you all for your attentiveness and patience, but thank you all.